Welcome to Father and Son, and welcome to you, Tom, on
Morning,
this Thursday, what date is it? 15th.
15th of February.
QANTAS reported their result today. Only 40 million in profit. They said the strike and industrial unrest cost them at least 70 to 80 million. How did the market see the result?
Well, Qantas shares are actually up. They're up around about 6 cents to the mid to high 160s. Now, of course, Qantas shares are a lot lower than what they used to be. Even though the profit was not great, the company has said they're going to cut a lot of jobs. I think 500 jobs are confirmed as being lost, and
most of those in Victoria.
Yes, and they say another 1,400 or up to 1,400 under review. I think what the market likes about Alan Joyce is that he is a tough CEO who is prepared to take hard decisions. Qantas also has got a lot of its routes under review. Apparently they could stop flying into Frankfurt, they could reduce the service to Mumbai in India.
They're only going to fly to Singapore, and they're going to link up with British Airways, which will do all the flights from into Europe. So there'll be no Qantas flights into Europe, not even to London.
Not even to London. It's amazing, isn't it?
Flying British Airways from early April. Yeah. Now the staff have been told this. The jumbo jet is not going to fly out of Melbourne at all. So Joanne, my partner, she has to switch to Brisbane. That's where she'll be operating from, because they're still going to run jumbos from Brisbane to LA and also into Dallas, which will be a good flight.
Well, it does show how much Qantas has changed, though, doesn't it? Back in the days when it was a government-owned airline, Qantas flew everywhere because that's how Australians got from A to B. Now it is truly a profit-making enterprise, not making much profit, but at least making some. And it's got to be said that most airlines around the world have lost money hand over fist over the past few years. So I guess we can be thankful that Qantas is still a profitable organisation. Can you imagine if we went back to 2006, 2007 when that absurd takeover bid was going on for Qantas?
Yes.
Had that gone ahead, and it was that close to going ahead, the company would have been hopelessly bankrupt now and probably wouldn't exist anymore.
No, exactly right. And the problem Qantas has got, of course, you've got airlines like Etihad and Emirates. They don't earn a profit at all.
No.
And their level and the cost to go to Europe on Qantas. My mate Rossi Heron, he was saying he got a return trip to London first class for $6,500 on Singapore Airlines, and the cheapest one from Qantas was about $10,500. Yeah. They're just not competitive.
No, that's right. So anyway, and of course domestically, Jetstar really is what Qantas is these days. And I think what you're going to see as shift is there'll be a handful of routes in the future that will still be badged as Qantas, and essentially the bulk of what Qantas does will actually be Jetstar. They'll have lower costs. Obviously, they have a much better deal.
Worse service.
That's the way it's going. They'll probably be like trams in Melbourne, where you just stand up and hold onto a strap instead of sitting down. But
that's what I did in Russia many years ago when I first opened it up. They didn't have enough seats.
Yeah.
Well, the guys were sitting on the loos.
Years ago, I went to Africa and they overbooked. It was a plane in Zimbabwe. And as I recall, they actually had a race around the aeroplane to see who got the seat. So it was just like, well, whoever gets out there the quickest.
That's it.
And I was young enough and fit enough to get one of the seats.
Lucky.
But look, speaking, there's been a lot of talk about job losses recently in Qantas, but of course
the unemployment came out this morning.
Well, that's right. And here's the thing. Now, this is the unemployment data for December. So this is the numbers prior to all the recent announcements about job cuts. But amazingly, up to 46,000 new jobs have been created. The participation rate was steady at 65.3%. The unemployment rate, as a result, has fallen 0.1%.
These are what, December.
So, but the unemployment rate stayed at the figure 5.1%. I mean, it's really quite astonishing. Now, admittedly, the bank cuts, the airline, etc., that's all happened since then, and you'd have to think that 5.1 is about as good as it gets.
But it'll go up to, back up to 5.3, 5.4 by the time these cuts that Qantas are making, the aluminium company, motor vehicles, banks.
Well, that's true, but I guess what it's saying about the Australian economy is it appears that even though as we lose jobs in some sectors, there are of course much more booming sectors like minerals and so forth, which are absorbing people at the moment. And of course, it's probably the reason that Reserve Bank decided to leave rates on hold.
Now this will mean, with that lower unemployment, you'd think that rates would stay on hold.
Well, I think they probably will, unless there's another debacle out of Europe, and a bit more on that in a moment. Probably it's the right decision. I mean, I hate saying this because I was one of the most people who thought those rates would be cut. But
I think it was a very bad decision. We said that last week because it's going to cost people jobs.
Well, it will, but I guess the Reserve Bank, you could argue, looks in the rear-view mirror, and we try and look forward. And anyway, forward is unlikely to be as good. Anyway, for now, rejoice in the fact unemployment 5.1%. We are the envy of the world, but there's no doubt about it.
Now we come on here every week, and the Greek situation still isn't sorted out.
No, well, I'll tell you what's happening. There was a good thing and a bad thing that's happened in the last few days. The good thing was that the leader of the Greek Conservative Party has agreed to sign a letter of intent with the EU, saying that whatever happens, let's say his party ends up being the senior governing party, they will abide by the austerity deal that's been done. The bad thing is that the Greek Parliament has decided, in its infinite wisdom, to hold an election in 2 months. And that's got everybody thinking, well, you know,
why are they doing that?
Because see, the current Prime Minister and Cabinet are not really democratically elected.
No, they're not in the Parliament at all.
So that's right, and they're saying, well, you know, Greece is the birthplace of democracy and all that. And we've got to have one. And this has got everybody worried that the deal that has been done, what is essentially won't stick. So, you know, it's sort of like 2 steps forward.
And if you wanted to win the election, you'd go out and say, we're not going to stick to
That's
this
right,
deal.
it's stuff it. You know, the Germans are ripping us off, and we'll stand up to the EU and all that sort of thing. So, anyway, share markets were down in the US and in Europe last night, and the Australian market today is getting absolutely smashed. It's down around 1.5%. So, you know, and this is the problem, Dad. I mean, it's one thing to say, here's the deal you've got to do, but if you don't have a government anymore that can credibly do deals, that doesn't have enough popularity with its own people, it's hard to know really who's in charge.
Yeah,
of course, we've got the same problem here in Australia.
We've certainly got it here.
We've got a Prime Minister that most people think is illegitimate, and our own party, many people think is illegitimate, and the sort of spectre of Kevin Rudd keeps hovering around the place.
You wouldn't know what's going to happen there.
No, you wouldn't. Well, actually,
well,
that's right. I mean, we could honestly wake up tomorrow morning and find that a beaming Kevin Rudd is suddenly the Prime Minister. But I mean, that would be interesting. I mean, Wayne Swan would be out of a job, Bill Shorten would be on the outer. All these people that have backed Julia Gillard would suddenly. I mean, Labor would struggle to find a front bench anymore because.
Well, yeah, I think you see a couple of members said they'd resign and they're forced by-elections.
Well, and Rob Oakeshott, the man you described as a lunatic, the federal independent MP, he has said that the deal he did back in late 2010 was with Julia Gillard, so he would not survive a change of leader. So really, what he's saying is, if Labor changes leader now, well, you can kiss goodbye to government.
I'll have to go to a full election and I'll get routed.
Do you think they'd get routed even with Kevin Rudd in charge?
I wouldn't be as bad.
No, but it would still be a defeat.
The last figures I saw, which was several months ago, Rudd would be 46 and Conservatives 54.
Yeah.
At the moment, it's about it's a bit higher, 56 to 43 or something.
Yeah, but
that's the two-party preferred.
Two-party preferred.
And the polls are showing she's going from bad to worse now. And they got one poll, the Fairfax poll came out a couple of weeks ago, looked like a position improved. The news poll came out and it was worse. Anyway, one thing that is very positive is that people who kill themselves goes down when the football season starts.
Is that true?
It's the only city in the world where more people commit suicide in the summer than they do in the winter. In every other city in the world, it's the opposite.
That's true. In fact, if you look at Northern Europe, I've read places like Helsinki in Finland, where the winter goes forever and it's dark and it's very cold. Sadly,
it's true everywhere in the world except in Melbourne, and the reason it isn't because everybody gets so excited about the football, gives them a reason to live. The NAB Cup starts tomorrow night. Can't believe it's on again. Now, I don't think I'll understand it very well because there's all these rule changes. They now play 2 15-minute quarters, 3 games in a night. Anyway, it'll be great to see it start, and then of course the opening of the season will commence with Carlton playing Richmond, I think on about the 28th of March.
Well, actually, the Carlton-Richmond game is no longer the opening game of the season because the AFL, again in its infinite wisdom, has decided to schedule the derby between the new Greater Western Sydney Giants and the Sydney Football Club on the Saturday before what used to be the Thursday night premiere. So that is in fact technically the opening game of season 2012.
You can say it's technical, but nobody will be watching it, I don't think.
No.
And, I think I'd rank the Carlton-Richmond game as the opening game of the season.
Anyway, lots going on, jobs being lost, economic data looks good, it's a very confusing and interesting time.
See you next week.